The tragedy at Sandy Hook Elementary has affected many people, including our State Department correspondent Margaret Brennan, who grew up just one town away from here. Some of her relatives and friends were among the first responders. Margaret, good morning.
Good morning to you.
Tell us a little bit about this town to start with. What kind of place is this?
Newtown is sort of your classic New England town. There's one main street, there's a classic town center. I grew up in Danbury, which is the town where the main hospital is. And it's one of those places where one of the first responders I was talking to yesterday said, you move here because things don't happen here.
Right.
There is no gun culture. This is a very quiet town.
Well, that's an interesting point that you make. I mean, this is not a place where you expect something, well, no place is a place where you expect something like this to happen, let's be clear. But because of what you say, this is not a really gun culture area, you know, that made this even more shocking.
It was one of the strange things coming up here yesterday from Washington and listening to journalists talk about coming up to cover the story, because so often when we talk about these tragedies, it's out west or it's in parts of the country where hunting or more obvious gun cultures are integrated. And here I was listening to people and getting a little shaken up, hearing them talk about, I'm like, oh gosh, you know, I know that. I know those people. I mean, the first thing I did yesterday was pick up the phone and find out where my cousins were, who were in lockdown here at the Catholic school that you were at last night at the
One
vigil.
of your cousins is 12 years old, I think, or something around that age?
In junior high age, yes.
Junior high age. So when you're talking to your family and they're on the ground here, especially in the initial stages of this, what were they telling you? What was the feedback?
We were just trying to find out where people were and if they were okay, and people were trying to find out what they could do to help. But that was one of the disappointing things, was so quickly people were sent home because there was no one to help.
Right.
There were so few people. I mean, only 2 kids actually made it to the hospital where they died, and one other adult made it there as well. So it's very strange. I mean, my family is struggling with what they tell their kids and how they explain this and whether they go back to school or not. I mean, most activities have been canceled this weekend, so there isn't a lot of distraction from all of this right now.
Well, I imagine it's hard to be distracted around here from this. And I imagine also it's, in many ways, the community at this point is still absorbing all the information before they can really start to come to grips with what's happened.
Yeah, I mean, I was eating dinner last night, and at the restaurant we were at, there were so many people just sharing stories. I mean, the bus driver who drove these kids to school yesterday was there at the bar and talking to people. I mean, you don't want to go up and bother people as a journalist, and I didn't want to go be that yesterday.
Right.
So it's a shock. I mean, people are just really sort of trying to absorb and just get through, I think, is what I know from my connections here.
What do you think that the rest of the nation who's watching can help them do to rebuild?
I don't know, frankly. I mean, I don't know what your next day is. I don't know how they explain to some of these little kids what happened. The first responders themselves, who I've talked to 4 or 5 of them so far. I mean, there's mandatory debriefs you have to go to, because when you go in an emergency, that's one thing. When you're dealing with a small child, it's a lot.
All right, Margaret Brennan.
Thank you, Margaret.
Thanks so much, Margaret.